everyone. We'll get started in just half a minute. It looks like folks are piling into the room right now. I'll just give everybody a minute to get settled there, and I will start up. I think we'll get started. Hello, everybody. I'm Kathy Kuntz from Cool Choices. I'm delighted you could join us today for this first webinar in our Sustainable Communities series. So Cool Choices was fortunate enough to receive some funding from the Carolyn Foundation to support a series of webinars focused on sustainability in communities. Our aim with this series is to share our expertise in the behavioral science realm with those of you who are trying to make amazing things happen, who are making amazing things happen in local communities, and hopefully find some great synergies there. So I'm delighted you could join us today for the first of these webinars. Today my aim is really to fire your imagination a little bit about what might be possible in your own community and how you might start working on that. The other three webinars in the series focus a little bit more tightly on behavioral science and specific tactics you can use in one form or another to accomplish things. But today we're doing a little bit more big picture motivational thing because it's fun to do some of that and think about what's really possible. As a tiny bit of background about us, Cool Choices is a nonprofit. We're located in Madison, Wisconsin, and our quest is to inspire individuals, businesses, and whole communities to adopt sustainable practices. So we do a lot of work with businesses. We do some community scale work. In all that we do, we're encouraging people to adopt new practices in ways that really make sustainability the new normal, the new culture in organizations and across whole communities. So as part of the work we do, we think a lot about how communities matter, and really, I think I can't emphasize enough that how important that kind of local leadership is and what cities can accomplish in this space. And in fact, I'm going to just quote someone else here for you for a second.
What you do on a local level, it matters every single day in the life of people who are making decisions on how they travel to work, on where they're going to live, on who they're purchasing their goods from. And in the daily behavioral choices, that's a local issue. And once people start to understand that it's not a high-end luxury component add-on, it's a way of doing business, then things are possible.
Okay, I wanted to share that little bit because I just really love how that local community leader in Minnesota talks about how our daily choices and behaviors are really driven by local municipal decisions about how our city is planned, how hospitable it is to bikers, how easy it is to know how efficient my house is. There are really thousands of ways that communities can make it easier or more difficult for folks to be environmentally sustainable. And what we're seeing certainly in the US and to some extent globally is a resurgence of attention to the importance of local government in sustainability and a push for local government to really be the leaders in it. And when we talk about this, when we talk about cities matter, cities can lead, very often we tend to think we're only talking about really big cities. So, if you do a Google search on cities and climate change, you're going to find a bunch of stuff about New York and San Francisco and London and really big global cities. Part of what I want you to take away today, though, from our conversation is that there are cities at every size, in every geography, that are leading on these issues. And that means there are things that every community can do, because there are compelling examples at all kinds of size levels. And to illustrate that, my maybe first example is Ashton Hayes. Some of you may be familiar with this. This is an English village that in 2006, Ashton Hayes committed to become England's first carbon neutral village. This is a village of 2,000 people, and the initiative there, they've got great stuff online. The initiative there really was driven by local residents who said, we could do this if we tried. Their efforts are very grassroots. This isn't a big fancy consulting project. This is local people figuring stuff out. I'm going to just give you an illustration of one of the graphs they share about their progress toward reducing emissions. You know, this isn't part of what I think is compelling about them is they aren't really, there's not a lot of fancy in what they do. They're just hunkering down and figuring it out. And in the process, they're building community. They're attracting new people and businesses to their community. And they're getting it done. They're reducing their emissions. And so it's a pretty compelling example. I'm going to give you a few other examples a little closer to home. Starting in Iowa, West Union, Iowa is a terrific example of a community that really kind of leveraged concerns into opportunity. So a typical small town in Iowa where they were concerned about their aging downtown, they pursued a geothermal heat pump system that heats and cools downtown buildings. Concerns about stormwater prompted them to pursue more permeable paving. You see down in this photo, permeable paving. This would be a rain garden of a sort. They've managed to secure multiple state and federal grants to support their initiatives. And really, again, they're doing all of this to revitalize their community, to make it a compelling place for people to live and work, and thinking about how that can be a hook to bring more people into sustainability is really important. Another great example of using sustainability as a hook is here in Wisconsin, Eau Claire, Wisconsin, about 65,000 people. Earlier this year, Eau Claire's City Council passed a resolution to have the city, the entire city, all of its operations, all of its residents and businesses achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. So they set a really aggressive goal. The University of Wisconsin in Eau Claire has followed and set a similarly aggressive goal. The really interesting and exciting momentum in Eau Claire right now around all of this. And one of the kind of interesting observations folks are making in this is that while overall Wisconsin's population has been going down since 2010, Eau Claire's population is growing, and there's particularly an influx of millennials. We'll talk more about millennials and what millennials want as we go through this, but there's something, you know, so young people, young families are moving to Eau Claire to be part of this sustainability revolution there. And so thinking about that, how that affects things. There's also, though, just straight up tax and revenue benefits from sustainability. And again, here I want to do one more short little video.
When solar power is produced, they actually pay a solar production credit. That becomes essentially like a tax benefit to the county, to the city, to the school district, and also to our townships. So really, we can think about this as almost the next big crop. What you see here is solar power that will be harvested over the next 30 years.
Fargo County, we really benefited from that. In our case, we're looking at probably about $250,000 a year in property tax relief that comes to us because of our solar activity. So in a 4-year period, Fargo County will be getting $1 million from this, which will help all the taxpayers out.
I personally work on the solar project. Taxes for
Yeah, so this fund right now generate about $950,000 in tax revenue for our county local townships that we're in. Even if you drive down I-90, you can see that they're really bridges, repaving roads, a lot of the county and township roads are getting redone too. It's good for the local communities. Wind farms generate tax revenues. The $1 million a year that the wind farms generate helps local schools, our school districts here, North Branch, and Final Lakes. The money that they receive taxes is several tens of thousands of dollars a year. It's really almost like having a commercial business.
So again, the story from Chisago County and other spots there in Minnesota is how those clean energy projects are delivering revenue back to municipalities and counties that can be reinvested in infrastructure, can mean property tax relief, etc. So been giving you some examples of folks who've set goals at all different sizes who are starting to see some benefits. I want to give you a couple more examples of kind of really interesting things going on in cities and where communities are trying to create benefits for residents. And a great example of this is Warren, Minnesota. So Warren is, sorry, did something weird there. A town in Minnesota that has about 1,600 people, and they're one of the communities in Minnesota that's been part of a partnership, the Climate Smart Partnership. So they've partnered with a city in Germany to get more ideas about how they can pursue climate mitigation and sustainability in their community. And they've come up with a really innovative idea around using thermal imaging. So what they're doing is they're having cameras, drones, drive over the fly. I guess you fly, you don't drive a drone. Fly over the village and take thermal imaging pictures of homes and businesses. And this is really super useful. I'm super excited about what they're doing there because so I spent lots of my career in traditional energy efficiency, and in the Midwest we work hard to help people understand that the efficiency of our homes is really important, that a well-insulated, air-sealed home is a huge benefit and can really reduce the wasted heating and cooling both in the summer and the winter. The trouble with that is it's really hard to convey the benefits of a well-insulated, effectively air-sealed home to consumers. I mean, the technical jargon that we use when we talk about air exchanges and CFM per square foot, it's super geeky. I mean, even for someone like me who's been around this for now decades, there's a way that my eyes glaze over when people start talking about CFM per square foot. But when you show me an image of my house and you show me an image where I can see that along the foundation, the heat's just pouring out of my house, that's a pretty compelling thing, particularly if you can show me that image and then show me another house where that's not happening. So I think in a sense, by making this visible, one of the things we'll talk a lot about in this series is how you make it kind of easier for people to do the right things. And by making it visible that there's a problem, you create the opportunity for people to fix that problem. You know, it's much more easy to talk to me about air sealing at my foundation when I know that all this heat is escaping at my foundation. So a really, I think, super creative way for them to try to make this more possible in their community, and that's an exciting thing. The other example here from Iowa is a little lower tech, but it's also along those lines of making things simple. So I love that Bloomfield, Iowa, on the front page of their their community website. This is the city website for Bloomfield, Iowa, and one of the drop-down menus is energy efficiency, where you can get information here about the Vista volunteers who will do an audit of your home. There's information below about the city's goals and different programs you can participate in. They've done some creative on-bill financing for income limited households to try to make efficiency more accessible. They're doing a ton of things to make it much easier for people to make the right choice. And again, in this series, we'll talk a lot about what in the behavioral world we call choice architecture. So anytime you're giving people an opportunity to do something, you're framing choices in a particular way. And what we know from the research is if you can make it easier for people to do the right thing, you'll increase the likelihood that they will do the right thing. So you know, I'm just excited that Bloomfield did this very simple thing, that they made it really easy for people to find this information about efficiency on their website. So kind of my aim here was to give you sort of a smattering of examples, mostly from really small places, because if small towns can do things and really big cities can do things, everybody in the middle can draw from one of those angles or the other. And I want to sort of talk about how you start to get that done. Like, you think, well, sure, Kathy, that happened in Ashton Hayes, but my community is complicated. I don't see people coming together to talk about sustainability here. And I think that's a legitimate question to have. You know, when someone asks me, but how are we going to get that done in my community? My response is to always ask, so what matters to your community? Tell me about what the issues are in your community right now. What are people talking about? Because in almost every instance, there's an aspect to those hot topics that sustainability can address. Let me give you an example, and then we'll sort of talk about this more generally. And my favorite example of this is Waukesha County, Wisconsin. So USA Today in 2016 said Waukesha County, Wisconsin is the reddest county in the United States, by which they meant it has the highest portion of its adult population registered and voting for conservative candidates. Waukesha County is this county right here. So in 2017, we were approached about doing a regional sustainability program in Waukesha County. And I was intrigued because I like interesting challenges. And we started talking to folks we knew in the county and asking them, so what's the hot topic in Waukesha County? What are people concerned about there? What's driving the conversation? And they actually talked to us about unemployment. So in Waukesha County, the unemployment rate was the second lowest in the state of Wisconsin. It was like, I think it's about this time, so it's like hovering at 2.6%. And this is a county that has lost population over the last decade. And so there were businesses talking about how they were unable to fill orders because they didn't have enough staff. There were small businesses talking about temporary closings because they didn't have enough staff. This was the issue. How do we make this work in Waukesha County with the challenges we've had here? So knowing that, we went into conversations in Waukesha County with the business community, with chambers of commerce and others, talking about what millennials want in a workplace. We went in sharing what we know about that millennials, 9 in 10 of them essentially, want a way to be involved in sustainability efforts at their place of work. So we talked there about how by engaging employees around sustainability, businesses could not only retain the workers that they have, but they could potentially recruit new workers more easily. And that was a compelling message. Indeed, our strongest partner in our work in Waukesha County was the County Workforce Development Board, the people who are charged with that sort of those labor shortages. They were extremely enthusiastic about helping us talk to businesses about those opportunities tied to sustainability. So it's really thinking about the pivot that can happen there. You know, what's the angle that works in this community, and how do we talk about things? As you're thinking about that, I want to give you kind of a couple of pieces of good news. The first is that in general, talking about sustainability is a positive thing. So the Shelton Group is a energy efficiency, sustainability, marketing and market research firm. And they did some work last year kind of thinking about, okay, we're an increasingly polarized country. So what about these terms we use to talk about things like sustainability? Where do they fall on that? And they tested terms with various groups of people from different political perspectives, from different age groups and educational levels. And ultimately, they identified 3 terms that were rated positively across all demographics. And one of those terms was sustainability. The other 2 were conservation and science. And interestingly, both conservation and science had slight negatives in some demographics. So in some cases, based on age or political persuasion, there were groups who were like, I don't totally love that. But sustainability rated positively across the board, across all of the groups. So when you talk about our community being sustainable, I think you have confidence that across really a myriad of age groups and perspectives and educational levels, folks are going to respond to that term relatively positively. So that's a first good piece for you. The other really good piece to think about when you're thinking about this at a community scale is that the business community is solidly behind sustainable practices. So 82% of Fortune 500 companies published corporate sustainability reports in 2016. That number keeps going up. You know, we're kind of into the laggards group now, so it goes up a small bit each year, but we're kind of fast approaching. Everyone at that scale is sharing CSR data, and partly they're doing that because investors expect it. Institutional investors are looking for that data. But again, it's a really good evidence that sustainability is mainstream, that this is what businesses are doing, and that gives you some more ground to stand on when you're talking about why your community should do this. The other piece of thinking about why your community should do this then is really thinking about, so what are those issues for us locally? Are we concerned about workforce issues? Are we concerned about cost of living issues? What matters to our community? And how can I help articulate how sustainability contributes to that? So reducing waste across both public facilities and our own homes and businesses increases profitability, increases revenue for other things. And, you know, really thinking about, so what's going to resonate in our community here? I think one of the messages that ultimately is kind of embedded in a number of those things and that almost always resonates is keeping dollars local. So back when I did energy efficiency things, we used to do these studies that looked at when people reduced their utility costs, what happened to that money. And the typical finding was that those dollars circulated 3 to 5 times across their community that they weren't sending to the utility. And so thinking about how you do things that kind of create more prosperity in your community is a really important piece to have as part of this conversation. Ultimately, of course, I'm arguing there's lots of ways to leverage this. There's lots of ways to insert sustainability into that conversation. Here in Wisconsin right now, we're in the midst of several weeks of record rainfall. We've got lakes at unprecedented levels. We have flash flood warnings, all kinds of folks doing all kinds of things tied to high water levels. There's an environmental message about climate change mitigation and that can be leveraged out of what we're doing here right now. In a ton of instances, there are messages you can leverage around the financial impact, keeping dollars local, investing less in wasting heat that escapes the building and more in teachers and books for students kind of thing. There's lots of ways to think about those leverage points. And as you're thinking about that, I think a really important piece is to engage local opinion leaders in that. You know, part of what you want to do is you want to go, oh, this is how sustainability, expanding what we do, reducing our waste, increasing our efficiencies can benefit our community. I really encourage you then to have that conversation with opinion leaders in your community and test out those messages and refine them so that you have a story that you can tell about your community. In the way that I told these various stories about communities, that this is a community that cares about this, that is concerned about that, and therefore we're pursuing these policies to reduce our overall energy consumption, to increase our water efficiency because X, Y, and Z. So having that really compelling story is, I think, a big piece of that. And with that, I want to just give a shout out to the Carolyn Foundation, who's again supporting this series. I would note that as part of the grant support, we do have funds to do one-on-one consulting with communities that feel like they have a particular challenge around behavioral issues or engaging folks. We'll talk more about this too in upcoming webinars, but if you've got interest in that, feel free to reach out to me. Otherwise, I want to quickly open it for questions. So in your little side panel thing, if it's shut, you can hit the arrow to open it, and there'll be a box there where you can enter questions. And then I will endeavor to be able to see them. So a great question. Our community has a committed team of people trying to work on sustainability, but we're really struggling to engage regular people in this, and engaging regular people is really hard. So we'll talk about this in the subsequent webinars a lot, but you know, part of it is that as humans, we're incredibly busy. There are so many things kind of buzzing around competing for our time and attention, and that's just real. So if you want to engage people, you know, our mantra is you need to think about how to make it fun, social, and easy for people to be engaged. Fun, pleasant. So if getting involved in doing something to reduce my energy consumption requires me to wade through 18 forms and read information on 16 different web pages, that's not fun, and it's not easy. And so really thinking about how do you expedite these things and give people exactly what they need when they need it. The social piece is probably, though, the most important piece when it comes to doing things at a community scale. So human beings are social creatures. We take a ton of cues from the people around us about what we should be doing and why we should be doing it. I recently was on a panel, and one of my co-panelists pointed out that the best predictor of whether people have flood insurance, people living in a floodplain, the best predictor of whether they will purchase flood insurance is if their neighbor has flood insurance. And, you know, it's just a great example of how we take cues for a ton of things from other people. And so really, when you're leading things at a community level, a big piece of what you want to do is think about how you create that social, how you get people talking about these things, how you get people sharing in a way that inspires others to follow those examples. And again, we'll talk about this a lot in the coming webinars because it's a huge challenge piece. With that, being cognizant of the time, we like to keep these to half an hour. I'm definitely at 12:30. So I'm going to close up. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you for everything you're doing to make sustainability happen in one or more local communities. This is super important work, and we're all grateful for what you do. And again, if there's a way we can help, reach out and let me know. Thanks so much. Have a great day. Bye.